A lot more folks getting logged in here, so I will go ahead and get us started. I'm Sunny Kearley. I serve as Vice President of Membership for the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber. Welcome to Enlighten in our virtual setting. So glad to have you here with us today. As everybody gets logged in, I'll give us a couple of reminders about the setup. As you get logged in, we automatically put you on mute. We ask everybody to use your video when you can, and especially whenever we get to the Q&A at the end. We love to see some faces, and again, I think we can have a real dialogue. So when we get to the Q&A portion, you can either type a message into the chat window and we can read that message or that question for you, or you can use the raise hand function and we can unmute you or call on you to speak. But again, I think we can have more of just a talk today than a Q&A of a speaker, which I think will be really great for us. Everybody, if you've got your chat window open, we'd love to know where you are and where you're watching from. A new note about today: we always record Enlighten and send it out on the Monday following with a note for you to share it with anyone that you think could benefit from this information. Today, for the first time, we're streaming live on the Chamber's Facebook page. So say hello to everybody who's watching us on that platform. I hope some folks have found us there today because that's an exciting new development for us. Before we get started hearing from Doug, I want to go over a few more notes. You know, Mass Mutual has been an amazing partner to us in launching Enlighten in person and then making the move to continue to support this program as we've become a virtual program over the last 6 months or so. The team at Mass Mutual has been such a partner to us and really wants to be a partner to the community during this stressful time. They have been in Oklahoma City since 1906, so they've seen us through a lot of different times of crisis and have been a stable, steady partner to a lot of families and a lot of businesses here during that time. If you feel like you could benefit from a strong financial institution to help advise you through this crisis, you can log on to oklahoma.massmutual.com to get more information. Also, I think Jolene Curry from Mass Mutual's office is usually on these calls, and you can message her directly or let anybody on the Chamber team know and we can get you connected. Today, we're really excited, as I said, to have a great member and friend to Chamber staff here, Doug Hacking. He owns a relationship consulting company that's focused on lowering stress and job strain in order to boost production, profits, and overall company health. Today, Doug is going to talk about emotional triggers, situations that evoke strong feelings of shame, guilt, sadness, or envy, and how they affect our bodies and our bottom lines. Doug Hacking with Relationship Resonance. You're our friend, you're an expert. We're so excited that you're here. Welcome.
Thanks, Sunny. Appreciate that. Let me get my screen shared here. And thank you, Mass Mutual, for sponsoring, and thank everybody for investing the time to come in and listen to this presentation. Okay.
I think Doug has some real custom graphics that we're going to get to see a little.
All right, I think I'm good. Is that showing?
It's showing. We see the gun in the heart and the scowly face.
Those are the keys to success. Put the guns away, keep your heart up, and don't make people angry. No, just kidding. Those icons do stand for some different things. Actually, they stand for what I do. So let me just back up. There it is. I do, like Sunny said, I focus on lowering stress and job strain in the workplace. And I work on 3 areas to do that, which is eliminating the triggers, focusing on trust and admiration, and dealing with difficult people. And they all kind of work together to achieve the same goals. Today, I'm going to focus on the triggers part and how that can elicit a threat response and what kind of effects that's going to have on our bodies and our bottom line. So triggers can definitely cause stress and job strain. And when we look at the data, we know that this is pre-pandemic data. Back in 2013, we found that 83% of people suffer from work-related stress. And one kind of misconception or common theme that I run into when I talk to upper management is that they seem to think that the stress is already coming from home or live, and it can't be me at work causing the stress, right? But when we look at the surveys and when we look at the numbers, it's actually the phone calls coming from inside the house. A lot of the stress that employees are enduring is because of the way their job's set up. And the data is clear. We know that you stress a human over a long enough period of time, they will become depressed. So we'll see later in this presentation where that plays in. So not only does stressing out our employees hurt the health of the employee, it also hurts our bottom lines. It adds $190 billion to healthcare expenses. Once that stress turns into depression, add on another $51 billion to deal with that. And it actually causes deaths. People are dying because of the stress they are experiencing at work. It relates to strokes, heart attacks, people that it's definitely decreasing your lifespan. And I've got 3 personal examples of friends, pharmacist friends, that are not with us today, and they've all clearly stated how stressful their job was days, weeks, months before. One had a heart attack, dropped dead of a heart attack. Another one was a young lady, and she died of a stroke. And another one was an elderly guy that had heart problems. But they all went on record with saying how stressful their job was. So these things can actually like create deaths in the people we know. So when you're in a stressful environment, one of the coping mechanisms is not to show up, right? Like, this guy's working today, or this boss, or I know I didn't do something last week, I'm going to get grilled today, I'm not going in. They'll call in sick, or they'll just bounce, they'll leave, right? And when we look at the numbers, we know that 1 million people in the US are going to skip work today alone. 1 million people are not going to show up because it's too stressful. And Evans and Knapp looked at this, and they're like, what kind of relationship does this have on our gross domestic product overall? And they found that it was a $6 billion annual US loss, or a 0.04% drop in GDP. We also know that if we could just eliminate most of the stress that the people are dealing with, they're not going to leave the company. Like, almost half of the people quit their jobs because of work stress. The real interesting thing about this GDP drop is that that's not really the problem. It's not the problem of sick days or turnover. What's killing the US and what's killing our GDP, which is a 10-fold significant drop, a 0.5% drop, is presenteeism. This is a new term that's being kicked around. And this is how they describe people that are showing up to work, but they're not at work. They're not giving their all. There's something, they're not giving 100% for sure. And it's a very significant drop, not only in our US GDP overall, but it's also creating a significant increase in new depression and anxiety cases. So Medscape found that it's up to as much as 14% of these new people that are coming in to my pharmacy and giving me a prescription for Zoloft or Prozac or Xanax. It's 14% of that is because of what they're having to deal with by going to work. Sometimes you can't quit. Sometimes you have to earn that money. Sometimes you can't find another job. You have to show up to work, and your body and our country as a whole endures the consequences of that. So there's definitely a huge economic impact and physical impact of stress, and triggers is a big component that can cause the stress in our everyday work environment. So just a quick definition of stress. What is it? Stress is when we perceive something is about to change, so we have to do something different as a result. We know that our life as we know it is going to change. So as a result, we need to change to avoid what we think is about to happen. That's a good thing sometimes. So if we're putting in for a promotion, we might change our behavior and step up our productivity a little bit. A friendly competition can always inspire to go maybe 110% for a week. But these are acute, short-term bursts of stress that we allow to increase our performance. T-Rex comes after us. Our body's going to dump in the necessary ingredients that we need to escape that T-Rex, right? These are positive things with stress. We're not just going to lay back and be like, oh, this T-Rex he's not going to eat me. Chomp, right? So stress can definitely have positive benefits, and people know this. The problem is people and companies abuse this. So they put the employees in these stressful conditions daily, and that's chronic stress. So imagine every day you wake up from work, every day you wake up and you go to work and you have to escape a T-Rex every single day. So over time, that leads to high blood pressure, heart attack, heart disease, anxiety, depression. So you don't really walk around with these red flags saying, oh, my blood pressure is high, or I think I might be depressed in a couple months. But what we do see on the surface is the list here. So people are going to have problems with interpersonal conflicts. They're going to seem unmotivated, unable to concentrate, frequently calling in sick. Their energy levels are off. They just seem kind of out of it. A high producer becomes a low producer. And we want to label these people as maybe lazy or slacking or whatever it may be. But really, it's just their outward appearance of what happens when the continual stress is creating these problems internally. So one of the things that stress does when it's an unhealthy stress is it creates this hormone in our bodies called cortisol. And when you get too much cortisol circulating over a long period of time, your body will automatically come to this list. It literally eats us up from the inside out. Whereas when you have a positive, like, working environment, it actually creates the opposite the opposite hormones in our bodies that actually make us able to concentrate, have good relationships. It's the other end of the coin, and it's all internal chemicals that these environments put that create like a cascade chain reaction that we really have no control over it once that cascade starts. So we have to learn to eliminate that increased cortisol production so that we don't run into this list. Okay, here's a magic formula that explains everything and how it all works. PTEM equals B. So if you get nothing else out of this talk today, know this relationship because it's so important, and here's why. So our perception determines our thoughts, which reveals our emotions and memories, and that equals our behavior. So the good thing about this equation is we can manipulate the variables. We can change our perception. We can learn to control our thoughts. We can work on our emotions. We can decide what memories we're going to call up, and that's going to change the way we behave. Another great thing about this equation is it's an equal sign, so you can drive it the other way. We can learn behaviors and learn actions to use that is going to change other people's thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and memories. So that's the key. When you understand how to manipulate these variables into a positive outcome, the production and the profitability just go off the charts. So taking that equation, let's take the P of perception into a threat. So now we are going to perceive a threat in the workplace, and that's going to then trigger our thoughts, emotions, memories, and our behavior. Likewise, if we perceive at work that, hey, this is going to be a reward if I do this, it's going to set a whole different cascade of thoughts, emotions, memories, and behaviors. So if it's a perceived threat versus a perceived reward, we want people to perceive things that are happening around them as rewarding. And it actually lights up the same areas in our brain as money. As if I were to give somebody free money, the brain scans are going to light up a certain area. Well, if they go to work and they feel that something they're doing is rewarding, they have a rewarding job, they did a rewarding action, same areas light up in their brain. So one interesting thing about that is if you praise somebody, so they did something, you praise them, that's a reward. That's the same to them as money, and people will actually work for less money in an environment where they're receiving these other types of rewards versus threats. And some people, there's no amount of money that you will pay them to have to deal with these threats. So when we're in this rewarding, positive environment, and where these brain activities show the same as money, people can critically think better, they can concentrate better, all the things you need to be a healthy, productive employee and for your business to soar. All based on just that internal makeup of, oh, I don't perceive any threats in this situation. When they do perceive a threat, they think their boss is threatening, they think an assignment's threatening, a coworker, whatever it is, Now they're in that cortisol, fight, flight, or freeze mode, and they're going to avoid these situations. They're going to not be able to concentrate. They're going to avoid the work. They're going to avoid coming in. They might avoid the company altogether. So there's an interesting study that came out that kind of explains what's going on here. And this was in 2001, Friedman and Foster. They took two groups of people. They separated them out and had them complete a maze. One group, the mouse goes through the maze and gets to the cheese, a reward. The other group, the mouse goes through the maze, gets to the owl, a threat. What they found is after these people took the test, the people that did the rewarding maze were able to do problems afterwards where they excelled in concentration and everything on that list, and they were able to like critically think and score well on the post test. The people that went through the maze to the threat were unable to. Their brain was in this like fight, flight, or freeze mode, and they scored poorly on the test. So there's two interesting things about that. One group went into a thrive mindset. The other group went into a survive mindset. And these things didn't happen to them personally. Just seeing the threat externally with a mouse through a maze was able to trigger this response. So even if you're not threatening an employee directly, if that employee sees somebody else being threatened, they're still going to have the same problems of concentration and productivity. The toxic workplace environment, or the recent Ellen environment, is a good example of that. So not only is it the individual that's being threatened, but if the individual sees others being threatened, same response. You lose creativity, you go to the lizard brain, and the cortisol levels increase. Another very interesting key is these effects last at least 30 minutes. So if you've endured a threat response, if you've been triggered, then it's not like you can just snap out of it. Managers are like, okay, I'm sorry, snap out of it. It's not that easy. It's gonna, these chemicals, all of the cascade internally that's happening, it's gonna take at least 30 minutes to get through that and to reset. So what happened to these people that did the mouse maze? They were triggered. They got triggered by the threat or the reward. So some common triggers. If you're on Facebook, you're scrolling through, and something makes you very angry, and you're like, do I comment? Do I let this happen? Most likely, it's going to be through one of these triggers here. So look through this list. So one of these words or two are going to really stick out if you think somebody's threatening this to you. If they're threatening, you're going to be treated unfairly. If they're going to threaten their loves taken away. If they're threatening that you're not going to be respected. Some of these words are going to really stick out, and you're going to be like, okay, that's my word. For me, it's respect. So respect is glaring at me right now. And I've gotten into so much trouble in the workplace when I feel like people under me, people over me, it doesn't matter, are not respecting me. I've lost my temper. If I feel customers don't respect me as a pharmacist, I've lost my temper. And it's the trigger for me was respect. And I had to I'll show you how to backtrack and get through that. But that's I've even at home, I've told my wife, I'm like, you guys don't even respect me when you act this way. So obviously that's my trigger that I have to work on, is respect. It might be different for you, but knowing these lists, knowing these triggers is the first key to overcoming all the negative consequences that can come at you after you've been triggered. So what's the strategy? Okay, so now I'm triggered. What do I do? Well, normally I used to play the victim. I can't believe they would do this to me. Wait until I explode, the trigger's coming, and then boom, I'm yelling back, blame everyone. It was her, she triggered me, she said this and that and the other. Or assuming it won't happen. I've gone into situations where I know this trigger's gonna come out, yet I just in my mind said, okay, it's probably not gonna happen today, but then of course it does. Or you just try to eliminate your emotions and say, I'm gonna stone face this trigger when it happens, and then that's how I'll deal with it. Those are all the unhealthy ways to deal with triggers. And these are the things that are gonna create other people seeing that the mouse to the owl. These are the things you do not want to do. So instead of playing the victim, own the change. When you start to feel the trigger affecting you emotionally, that PTEM equals B, and now you're getting the thoughts and emotions start to stir up, own it. Be like, okay, wait a minute. What is going on here? Why am I becoming upset? What just triggered me? And then identify it early. I'm like, okay, she did or said this, or he did or said this, and now I'm starting to feel this. What was it? Why? Is it respect? Do I feel like they don't respect me? Trace it back to the initial triggers on that list, and then rehearse what is going to happen. So next time I feel somebody is questioning my respect as a boss or as a pharmacist or as a husband, whatever it is, this is how I'm going to handle the situation. Then we need to learn how to actively shift once we're triggered and all these things are, the emotions, thoughts, memories are being stirred up. We need to learn how to actively shift that back to a productive state, which is the emotional shift state. So first thing, relax and breathe. I've been listening to people tell me to relax or to give people advice to relax and breathe for 20 years now. And I always thought it doesn't work, but it works. If we can just take that 2 or 3 seconds to take a deep breath, first of all, we're changing the internal makeup of our body. We're literally putting our body into that fight, flight, or freeze, back into rest and digest. You can go into a pharmacy, put your arm in a blood pressure machine, be all worked up, and if you'll just take 5 or 10 deep breaths and then take your blood pressure again, it will be lower. You can literally drop your own blood pressure this way. So relax, learn to relax and breathe. If you have to just step away, shift your focus so you're not in this environment where you're going to continue to spiral. Take a walk, take a drive, go to a different room, go to the bathroom. There's a lot of ways you can get out of this immediate threat environment, immediate trigger, and kind of give yourself time to go take some deep breaths and breathe and reset. Centering to become present. I've heard this every time I watch my wife do yoga. They're always talking about find your center, feel a sensation in your feet, feel a sensation in your legs, feel it in your stomach. Think of a positive word you want to say. And that's stress resilience, emotional shifting 101. It really does work. That's why it's a type of meditation, and that's why they all really promote it. And it is very effective to shift that mind. So instead of getting in your brain where you're spiraling rumination, you can just start by feeling your toes, feeling your leg, feeling your stomach, and move it up. And your body can't do both at the same time. So the more you can kind of trick it to think of other things, the less you're going to spiral and ruminate on the trigger until you can get a better grip on it. And then mantras, focus on a keyword, positive affirmations to yourself, how you want to feel, actually can tell your brain to switch from one area to the other. So we really do have a lot of control over these things that we can control in our body. Turns out that deep breaths, mantras, centering, we can actually shift our emotional states. It's hard. It takes a lot of practice. And when you're in the middle of it and you're triggered, that's the absolute worst time, because your prefrontal cortex is offline. So everything that we're talking about here today is gone. You're in straight lizard brain, and you're fight, flight, or freeze, and you're going to usually lash back and fight or bounce or whatever it is. And it's just because your brain's not in that prefrontal cortex area to do these strategies. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of time up front to practice and have a game plan for when you're triggered, why you're triggered, how you're going to deal with the trigger in order to become a more effective leader, a more effective boss, manager, and have a lot more productive workplace. And you're not going to win them all. Some days you're going to lose to the lizard brain, but some days you're going to win, and those wins are going to compound, and you're going to get better and better. And then those stress numbers that we talked about in the beginning are going to drop. And when they drop, the production's going to go up. It's not an all or nothing. It's a lifestyle, and it's a continual practice, Kaizen, always getting better. Okay. Another thing that I really struggle with that I think is very important for managers and everybody on this call is the false trigger. So we all have biases. We all have emotions. We all have an imagination, and we all have a negative filter. And we take these stimulus or inputs from the environment, and we filter them through our processes that actually might not be the truth. So I'm high in subjectivity. I'm a super hard self-critic on myself, And I'll take a compliment and convert it into an insult 9 out of 10 times. I'll give the insult to myself. I'll be like, they didn't mention this, so I must have done that very poorly. So I've got to learn to turn these filters off and get more objective on confirming the facts before I let a trigger initiate that PTEMB response, and then I make some bad behavioral decision. So everybody has a bias. I don't care who you are. And if you go to the harvardimplicitbias.com, they can test you, and it might be ageism, it might be a type of ethnicity. There's a lot of different things that you're going to tell yourself, and you're going to tell the world, oh, I don't have a bias there. But when you do the Harvard implicit testing, they ask so many questions so fast, you can't trick your brain, and it's going to uncover some potential implicit biases that you may not even know about. And those implicit biases are going to change your PTEMB and behavior, and you're going to unintentionally trigger people without even realizing it. So one of my implicit bias, which doesn't make sense now that I'm getting older myself, is age. So it turns out I had an implicit bias against elderly people. And when I look back in my life, I see where that came from. I see why I have that, but I have to be aware of that when I'm interviewing people and just dealing with people in the world, that if for some reason I feel triggered or off-put by somebody that's elderly, hello, it's because I have an implicit bias and I need to work on that. So understanding yourself is a huge key. And I really recommend everybody I think it's harvardimplicitquiz.com or something like that. You should be able to Google and find it. It's really helpful to uncover those. So for me and for you, I recommend anybody that before you get an emotional response about anything, to always objectively confirm the facts. So instead of letting all these filters and negative and the biases and emotions get us, ask like, hey, did you mean when you say that, it kind of feels like you don't really respect me as a boss? Is that how you're like trying to like put this out there? Get objective first, because it's probably not going to be the case at all. And once you have that objective dialogue, that's going to block a lot of triggers from affecting your behavior. Okay, how much time do we have left, PS?
It's really just now 12:30.
I didn't hear.
It's just now 12:30.
She's on mute.
No.
Doug, can you hear me?
It's okay. It's okay. I'll keep going.
We probably
It's still on mute. I'm not getting it. It's all right. Sorry to derail. Okay, so this slide right here this came out by the Neuro Leadership Institute 2008, and this is a perfect model of how to collaborate and influence others in the workplace. And it's the SCARF model, and it stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And these are all potential triggers or rewards that we can do in the workplace. If you happen to see my Rise and Shine last year, we kind of focused in on the status part of this model. So just a quick example of status. If you think that they are right and you're wrong, that's going to create a huge status threat in your mind, and you're going to do everything in your power to prove that you're right and they're wrong, and that puts you at a higher status than they are, which is going to create this whole threat response problem. You're either going to get triggered or you're going to trigger them, and that's what Facebook is today. Everybody needs to prove that they're better than the other person, they're right, the other person's wrong, because that gives them that status boost, reward, or status update. And that's one of the reasons that's happening. So all of these areas, there's status problems at work, there's certainty problems at work. You start changing people's schedules around, and they're uncertain when they're going to work, what time they're going to leave. Autonomy, you start micromanaging them. Relatedness, there's like an in-group, but then these guys kind of aren't in the in-group. These guys all have blue shirts because they've been with the company, but these guys over here have white shirts, and they're kind of treated like lower class people because they just haven't been with the company as long. These are all threats that decrease productivity, decrease like effort, concentration, all of the things on the list. And fairness is a huge one. We have an irrational response to fairness, and people will actually quit a job over a perceived unfairness, like in wage. They think somebody's making 10 cents more an hour than them. They'll quit over that, even though a rational person would say, well, 10 cents isn't going to affect anything in my life, but it's that irrational threat of the fairness that will drive that behavior. So this is usually like a kind of a 2-hour talk, and we really start hitting on these and how companies can turn all of these threats into rewards. And you want to definitely avoid these threats, and you want to increase the rewards because you want to avoid those triggers and then increase productivity. So de-escalate. So this all sounds great. What happens when all this goes out the window and now we got somebody triggered? So this is going to happen. You're going to trigger people. You're going to be triggered. This is how you got to de-escalate the situation and keep it from just turning into the debate, right? The presidential debate was just a complete lack of de-escalating. Even the moderator was involved, and it just got out of control. So to de-escalate a situation, put aside your viewpoint, check yourself, check your own attitude. Don't bring your attitude into it. Give value to the other people's view, listen and confirm their feelings, and so on. The bottom one, let them feel heard and understood, is huge. When people feel heard and understood, it's going to de-escalate 99 out of 100 conflicts. So an example of this, I had a Facebook post a couple months ago, and I posted something about, I was praising our church pastor for his message of how he handled the situation. And this person that I didn't even know I was friends with came in and blasted me and the church, F-bombs, blah, 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 not true. What about A, B, and C, D? And my normal response is just to block and delete the person. But there was already so much in the thread. I was like, okay, I need to walk the walk. I need to de-escalate this situation. So what I did was I made them feel heard and understood right out of the gate. And I said, hey, I know it feels hard when you feel like you don't fit in with a group or somebody doesn't accept you. After they felt heard and understood, the whole thread changed. They deleted all of the cursing threads, and we were able to like come to a productive conversation. Do we have 5 minutes, or are we out of time?
I think your headphones may have gotten disconnected.
I'm still getting a mute.
So we will keep working to get reconnected.
Oh, I wonder if I have any sound. Okay. Just give me, if like a 3 minute or 5 minute, just hold that, and then that'll kind of give me a.
You got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Woo! Okay. We're doing great. All right. That's great news. Okay. So connect and lead. This came out of Harvard Business Review, and it's super important on how we need to lead our teams. So many of us want to lead with logic and solution right out of the gate. We want to like flex what we know and just immediately fix the problem. We see a situation, we see trouble on the horizon, and we just come right in with a logic and solution. And everybody's missing the part of connecting right brain to right brain first. So you hear things like they don't care about what you know until they know that you care. Lead with your heart before your head. This has gone back from like ancient proverbs, because this is how our brains work. And if you want to really have a positive, if you want to be able to get an open receptiveness to the logic and solution, first you have to connect the emotion and validate that. So somebody comes to you with a problem, and like an example of the Facebook, like I'm not going to condone the cursing, but I'm going to acknowledge that, hey, it's really frustrating when this happens. So just knowing that this is the situation and this is the feelings and this is really frustrating to you, and I get it, automatically does this magical door opening to where you can then come in and get the logic and solution. And without that door being open first, logic and solution is not going to be received. It'll be blocked and not absorbed by the other person. So if you fail to connect them, the only way to get to trust and admiration is to first show warmth, connect, then lead with competence. And by the way, your logic and solution needs to be good as well, because if you give a faulty logic or faulty solution, that's not going to do anything for the trust and admiration either. Okay, so to sum it all up, stress is a big problem in the workplace. The data is clear out there. It's pre-pandemic data. We know 83% of people are stressed from what's happening in work. It's probably 100% now. It's a big deal, and it's costing a lot of personal and financial problems in the US. And we're all guilty of doing it. We all send unintentional triggers. We become triggered ourselves. Some of us now maybe know why we're being triggered, but sometimes we still don't know why. And we have to really slow down. And when these emotions, the PTEM equals B, starts to stir up these thoughts and emotions, we need to get a hold of it and figure out what exactly is the cause. Because we know that the trigger is going to activate that threat response. And once we get into the threat response, it's fight, flight, freeze, cortisol, problems. We know that we can work on our perceptions to drive behavior. We know we can work on our behavior to drive perceptions. The SCARF model, we know that that's a really good model in finding each of those areas in your workplace every day that is going to eliminate these stressful triggers, and on the other side, turn them into a reward. And that's what we need to do. We really need to start rewarding our employees. We hired them. We were happy that they came to our companies, right? And the very first day they're posting, hey, I got a new job. This is great. And then what happens? They're like, this job is crazy. My boss is doing this. I feel like this. This wasn't what they said. Now they want this, and I have no autonomy. I'm being micromanaged every day. Like, all of these problems start to happen when we need to make it a reward for them. Like, it's on us to fix this. It's on everybody on this call to fix this. It's a huge problem, and it takes a lot of work, but we can do it. And we can do it for Oklahoma. We can do it for all these OKC chamber people, and we can really put Oklahoma on the map as one of the best places to work. But it just takes a little bit of research and understanding on how to do that. Connecting with your people is a two-step process. Don't hit them with the logic and solutions before you've given a chance to connect with them emotionally and validate what they're going through. Just validate what they're going through. That alone will fix so many of your workplace problems. When somebody comes to you upset, just say, hey, I get it. You're upset when I do this. And they're like, yes, thank you. And that's such a big step. It's almost like apologizing. A lot of us don't want to apologize, but these little things of vulnerability and effort on our end go a long way to fixing this problem. And then if we can do that, we're going to improve performance. We're going to improve the overall health of people, right? So they're going to be on less anxiety, depression prescriptions, and we can actually be the ones responsible for that. Everybody on the call could actually lower that 14% of people coming into the pharmacy with these new prescriptions to 10%, 9%, 8%. We all have the power to do this. So I really just can't stress enough how important this is for me, for people to receive this information and actually let it sink in and start making some of these changes in the workplaces where you're at now. And if anybody wants a little summary list, you can screenshot that, or if this is recorded, this has all the references for what we talked about today. And this will give you a good start on where to get the information. And that's all I got. So now we'll go to questions.
Thank you so much, Doug. And it seemed like we had a little bit of a sound problem there for a minute, where maybe we weren't connected to his headphones. So as the events team works on getting connected with Doug to sort through that, let me say a thing we didn't really include in our introduction of Doug that
so I got my lovely assistant over here.
Is that he has his Doctor of Pharmacy degree and is a practicing pharmacist at CVS Pharmacy right now. So as you hear him talk about these real clinical aspects of these responses, he has that background as a PharmD to understand what happens in our bodies whenever we get those kinds of hormones and stuff coming at us. Also, it has made me think, and we talked a little bit before you all got here to the meeting, that Doug's other job is really, really stressful right now during this COVID crisis. So he may have been in his lizard brain a little bit lately. And so he's feeling this as hard as any of us could possibly be. It looks like maybe we've got our sound connected back. So that's good.
Yes.
Excellent. Let me remind everyone that if you would like to ask Doug questions, you can type them into the chat window, or you can use the raise hand function and we can unmute you. And as I said in the beginning, I think a real conversational style for this Q&A today would make a lot of sense for Doug. We have had a couple of questions come in that I'll start with. Okay. Doug, the first question that we have is, do you have any advice for us in interacting with people who aren't able to recognize their own implicit bias?
That's tough. So you're dealing with somebody that obviously has a bias, but they don't recognize it themselves. And if you can get them to watch like Zoom calls like this, or to get them, you know, like, hey, have you seen this implicit bias link? Or just like, I don't know, that's tough when you don't realize it. And a lot of us don't realize it ourselves, but maybe just having that open dialogue with, hey, I learned some things about implicit bias today, and maybe we could have a conversation about it.
So really, as you were just saying, that it's about education and about having these conversations about how this affects us in our work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you can get them hooked in with like, hey, this actually, I learned some things that improve productivity and profits, then that usually will open the reception to some of these people to at least give it a listen.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
You answered some of this in that last segment, but we have another question about, in a leadership role, how do you help people manage through triggers?
So, like somebody under me is triggered?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing in a management role is we all have to take the responsibility of, are we causing the triggers, right? Are we in an environment, are we letting these people work in an environment where they're being subjected to triggers? So we really can create trigger-free workplaces. And even if say at the pharmacy, if an angry customer comes in and begins to attempt to trigger one of my employees, I can walk over there and interject and to have a conversation with the customer like, hey, you know, we treat you with respect. We need you to treat us with respect. That's the deal at this pharmacy. And you can kind of protect your people that way. Now, if you've triggered somebody unintentionally and now they're triggered, then you need to own that, and you need to become responsible on how to de-escalate it, or how to, you know, have a conversation afterwards, like, you know what, that was my bad. I triggered you in that situation, and let's work on a plan to avoid this in the future.
Thank you. You put up a great list of resources there at the end, but we have a question about, do you have any further advice about how to really dig into one's own triggers and start to identify what those are and think that through?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty easy, because we all get triggered every day. So next time you're upset, step back and figure out why. Like, what made me so upset? And not just because somebody said something to you, but what was it that they said? Like, why are you upset about that? Is it because they're attacking like your credibility? Are they attacking your work ethic? Are they attacking, you know, really dig deep and try to unravel it and figure out what exactly it is. And that list, look at that list and just say, well, did they say something that makes me think they don't actually love me, right? So it's self-reflection, and it's like playing a detective with yourself on, why am I getting upset? Why is this affecting? Why is my heart racing all of a sudden?
So this is a dig into one of the questions we've asked already, but a message came directly to me to say, this was so excellent.
Thanks.
What steps can organizations take to build trust and admiration for authenticity and sincere warmth? Recommend any team building steps.
Well, I've got some stuff for that. So that's the heart. So I do a presentation on warmth and competence, and that's a system. I have an equip system that I try to get into every company. And these are 5 keys that you can use to inject warmth into your workplace. So it's equip, encourage, quality time, understanding, investing, and presence. Make a conscious effort to inject those key variables into your conversations, into your workflow, into your culture, and there's the warmth component.
Is there a place on your website that we could go and see a little bit more about that process?
Absolutely. So DougHacking.com,
we'll the homepage kind of will funnel you to whichever one you want to go to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another question. How can employers help reduce the amount of unnecessary stress placed on their employees during what is a globally stressful time? So those of us who have stressful jobs all the time, and then compounded with everything that's happening in the world right now, how can the employers and leaders help reduce the undue stress?
So I'm so glad somebody asked that question, because that's exactly what everybody needs to be asking. Everybody on here needs to be asking, what do we need to do in this stressful time to like help alleviate some of the stress and not make it worse? So from the topic today, it would be that SCARF model. Go through all of those areas and identify where people might be perceiving things as unfair. Look at scheduling. Are people being is there uncertainty in a schedule, in a work schedule? Is there uncertainty when the person's going to go home? Is there uncertainty if they're even coming in next week? And look at all of those key variables, and then let your people know that, hey, you have certainty, okay? This is going to be your schedule. You're going to have a job next week. We're going to have you come in. You're going to do this. And that's all a certainty reward. And that actually is going to lower the stress.
So I have a follow-up to that, just based on a conversation that I had with a member this morning, who is a leader in an organization in a really uncertain situation, and I think is struggling with, what can I communicate to my people right now when I don't have the answers for those kinds of things? What advice would you give to someone like that?
Yep. So a lot of times we don't know, right? So we want to give the employee authenticity and just be upfront and honest with them. But at the same time, there's tiny little certainty wins that you could have, like a shift win. Like, this is how your shift's going to go today, right? And then that it happens that way, and that's a certainty win. This is what your next 3 days are going to look like. It happens, and that's a certainty win. You don't have to paint the whole, like, this is how we're going to get out of the pandemic, but you can build tiny little certainty wins. And actually, music in the office creates a certainty reward, because if it's a song that you know how that song's going to go, your brain says, oh, I know how this is going to go. And that's a certainty reward. Little things like this can go a long way. Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And a great lead in, I think, to this next question. Are there stress reducing practices that we can implement in our individual lives that might help us have less reactivity to our own triggers? So it sounds like we should jam to our own playlist.
Yes. Get those playlists rolling. Yeah. And then we kind of touched on that a little bit of just the practice, the centering, it's almost like the meditation. Like, there are things that you can do, the deep breathing, taking time out, and maybe your work office, everybody could be like, hey, we're going to take a quick time out, 5 minutes of time out. Everybody just do deep breaths and just kind of detach for a second, and then we'll go back into it. But there are definitely a lot of resources out there and a lot of strategies, yoga, taking walks, exercise. These are all like huge for learning how to create these new positive pathways. And Aetna is a perfect example. Aetna pays people to sleep. They'll give you a smartwatch, and if you show that you're sleeping 8 hours a day, that's going to help. If you're getting exercise and activity, that's going to help. And then you send your data in, and they'll give you money, because they know how important that is to the overall productivity.
Well, so that gives a follow-up question.
Okay.
I know we all have intention to do deep breathing and take walks in the day, but in our hectic lives, a day can go by really easily with the best of intentions and never having taken those breaks. Do you have any strategies for making sure that you follow up on these good ideas that we all mean to do?
So this is a common deal, right? And I'll be honest, like, I was killing it on exercise, and then the last 3 weeks, when I look at my exercise pattern, it's been bad. So it's accountability, having an accountability partner, a team kind of competition thing can sometimes help with that. But definitely you need somebody kind of tracking it, kind of holding you accountable, or we're all just going to eventually revert back to not doing it. And it's just little wins. So if you can just incorporate parking farther in the parking lot before you walk into Target, and forcing yourself to walk the whole length of that parking lot and back, that's a small win, and you can build on that.
So maybe I shouldn't have told everyone that you're a pharmacist, because I think maybe now you're going to get the pharmacist questions. So,
That's fine. That's fine.
so here's
like
a
that.
question from you in that regard. Being a pharmacist, has there been an increase in sleep aid requests, prescriptions since March of this year? Any over-the-counter suggestions you feel comfortable giving?
So sleep's a tough one. And yes, all of the anxiety, depression, sleep, they all go together. They've been on the increase for sure. It's really hard. Even the prescriptions don't work that great. They'll put you to sleep, but then a lot of times you'll wake up in the middle of the night, and it's really hard to find a medicine that's going to give you that perfect 8-hour sleep. Some of them go longer, like if you take Benadryl, Tylenol PM has Benadryl, then you kind of have the hangover effect the next day. Melatonin can kind of work a little bit short term, but then sometimes people kind of become like adapted to that. So the sleep really is hard. So as far as a medicine fix for sleep, I don't think that is the answer. I think an exercise fix for sleep is better. You put your body through a good exercise regimen, not 45 minutes before you go to bed, but sometimes during the day, and you're going to be tired and you're going to sleep.
So that's a pretty straight talk from a pharmacist to say that medicine is not the answer for this, that it's your own.
You know, and it really isn't. And I'll be honest, a lot of the prescriptions that come in, they can help, but they're definitely not the magic bullet. And nobody has found like the perfect sleep medicine.
Thank you for that answer. I think we may have time for one more question for Doug. Do we have anybody who has a hand raised or a note in the chat box? While I wait to see if we've got any other questions, Doug, do you have any final remarks that you'd like to make?
I would just say thanks, Sunny, and thanks for this opportunity. And I always love helping out the chamber and coming to these talks. And I really do appreciate everybody that came in, because if I can just make one little ripple in some little business somewhere, that's super fulfilling and rewarding to me. And I appreciate, and thank you, Mass Mutual, for putting it on. And I just appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for saying that. And I think you're getting some other thank yous in the chat window right now. I appreciate
Cool.
that. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody, for spending time with us today. We'll send out the recording to this event on Monday. You're welcome to share it with anyone. And then also know that we'll have it posted on our Facebook page from that Facebook Live broadcast that we did today. So be sure to find the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber Facebook page and share this session with any of your followers there. We would love for people to know that this is a thing we're doing every month, and to get this good information that we got from Doug today. If you liked this content, we really hope that you'll join us for Elevate, Oklahoma City's Professional Development Conference. It's gone virtual on October 29th. This year's Elevate experience will include 2 keynote speakers, a choice of 3 breakout sessions, access to a virtual expo, a custom attendee profile and personalized agenda, and live community entertainment. I think this platform we're using is going to do everything it can to make it feel like it felt when we were all together last year and did this, a great sense of excitement about your career and about Oklahoma City. We really hope that you'll join us. Go to okcelevate.com to purchase your tickets or for more information. You're also invited to join us at the next Chamber Forum on Wednesday, October 21st. A panel of speakers will discuss the growing appeal of the Oklahoma film industry. It should be a really interesting and fulfilling discussion. Also, I think those Chamber Forums are really good for networking, even in the virtual setting, because we use the breakout function, and it's a great place to interact directly with people. Finally, our next Enlighten will be on Friday, November 6th from noon to 1. Stay tuned for speaker announcements. You can register for all of these events and more at okcchamber.com/events. Again, I'd like to give a heartfelt thanks to Mass Mutual Oklahoma for their ongoing partnership and support. We couldn't do Enlighten without them, and we couldn't do Enlighten without you. Thank you all for being here with us today. Our meeting is adjourned.